a piece of cake, okay? If you don't know the distributive property well, you need to make sure that you are practicing the distributive property very well today, okay? So here's what it looks like. Your problems are going to look a little bit different. So this is just an extension from yesterday, so we'll call this example, I think this is like example 3 in the book. So the first one looks like this. B minus 8 over 5 equals B plus 3 over 4. Okay, notice the setup. It's still a proportion. It's still something over something equals something over something. Okay, still a proportion. So we're still going to solve it by cross multiplying. But now here's the deal. Hey, put it away. Put it away. No, like remove it from your presence. Away. There you go. So when you cross multiply this, you're going to multiply these two, and you're going to multiply those two. Notes, girls. Take notes.
Well, that's on my iPad. Yeah.
Well, then take the notes on your iPad. You were not doing that on her iPad.
Oh,
No, you guys were screwing around on her iPad.
no,
So,
it wasn't on. I was turning it on for her.
super.
Still on the one, huh?
Anyway, when you cross multiply this, okay, the biggest thing you need to focus on is there are not parentheses there, and you need to put parentheses there because we're going to do the distributive property, okay? So if I'm multiplying 5 times b plus 3, I'm going to write that as 5 parentheses b plus 3. Okay, so it's 5 times b plus 3 is your one cross. Then you put your equal sign, and now we're going to cross it the other way. What's that going to look like? 4 parentheses b minus 8. Okay, so it's these two that are being multiplied, and it's these two that are being multiplied. Okay? From here, this should not look new to you because you've solved these kind of problems already, right? This was solving multi-step equations. I don't remember what section that was. But we're just going to simplify and solve now. What do I do?
5B.
Right, 5b plus 15. Don't forget to multiply the 5 and the 3, right? That's where a lot of people leave it off. So 5b plus 15 equals
4B plus 32.
close, 4b minus 32, right? Because we're subtracting. So 4 times 8 is 32. So that's your setup, okay? Now you have variables on both sides. How do I get them to one side? Subtract what? Subtract the 4b.
Why did you add it? Because Brooklyn is.
Because it's already positive, so you want to cancel it out. So subtract 4b from both sides. This is gone. Now we have 1b, which you can just call b, plus 15 equals negative 32. Okay? Now you subtract 15. This is gone, so b equals a negative 47. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. It is a lot of steps, but you know all the steps. So just the initial setup is all you need to make sure you're clear on. The rest of them, you know how to do. All right, how do you do this one? This is, we'll call this b. N divided by 5 equals 2n plus 4 divided by 6. Okay.
6n and then 5 parentheses 2n plus 4.
Right, so cross this, you get 6n. Okay, cross this, you get 5 parentheses 2n plus 4. Okay. Now you're going to distribute. Now you're going to take the 5 and multiply by both those things. So it's going to be 6n equals 10n, right? 5 times 2n, that's 10n, plus, God bless you, 5 times 4 is 20. Okay? I feel like at this point, a lot of people make a mistake on this problem because you're so used to subtracting the 6n instead of the 10n, that you end up with everything on the right side of your equation, which is okay. You just need to make sure that you then move your numbers, God bless you, to the left side, okay? So it's really up to you what your next step is, but make sure you're following the rules of solving an equation, okay? What would you prefer to do next? Subtract the 10n.
So both sides.
Well, so we're trying to get something on the left, just the ends on the left and everything else on the right then, right? So if I'll show you both ways. Let's show you both ways, okay? You could do this, take away 10n. This goes away then. What's 6 minus 10n? Negative 4n equals 20. Then what do? Divide by negative 4. So n is negative 5. Okay, so that's one way you could do it. Let me show you the other way. If it's 6n equals 10n plus 20, some of you prefer to keep it positive, right? Take away the 6n. Okay, here's what you have to realize when you do this. What's 6n minus 6n? 0. You have to put that 0 in because there's nothing else on that side of the equation. Okay, that's where people make the mistake. So 10n minus 6n is 4n plus 20. So now where do you solve from this? Minus what? 20, right. So if I take away the 20 on both sides, I get negative 20 equals 4n. This goes away. Divide by 4. N equals negative 5. So notice you get the same answer. If you do it this way, it takes one more step. If you do it this way, it takes one less step than the other way. So it doesn't matter as long as you follow the rules of solving an equation. You may do it both ways. Does that make sense? Okay. No. But that's half of it. Okay. The other day, remember we were doing conversions where we said like miles per hour and then we were trying to convert it to feet per second or whatever, okay? Today, we're gonna deal with units again, but they're not conversions, they're proportions, okay? So here's a little note to write to yourself. Proportions need the same units in the numerator. You should be writing this, you guys. Write this down. The same units in the numerator and the same units in the denominator. Okay? That does not mean you need the same units in both. It means across your numerators, your units need to be the same. Across your denominators, your units need to be the same. So, for instance, if I were looking at a proportion and it said 100 miles to 2 hours, over here then, if I'm dealing with miles and hours again, I would say it's X miles in 5 hours, okay? Notice what happens. I have in my numerator miles and miles. In my denominator, I have hours and hours. You cannot flip that. You cannot do 100 miles over 2 hours and then make it match up with 5 hours over X miles, okay? This is a big no-no. You may not put miles diagonal from miles, but remember, you're used to doing miles diagonal from miles when we're trying to cancel them out. With proportions, we're not trying to cancel them out. We're setting them equal to each other. So in order for them to be equal, their units have to match up. Everyone with me on that? Okay, so for today's homework, you're never cross-canceling units. It's not going to be miles and miles. It's going to be miles across from miles, okay? It's going to be inches across from inches. So make sure you're matching them up horizontally today, not diagonally like we did a couple days ago, okay? With that in mind, here's the type of problem you're going to solve. it says an MP3 player has 2 gigabytes of storage, and that can hold about 500 songs. Okay. It says a similar but larger MP3 has 80 gigabytes of storage. And we want to know how many songs would that one be able to hold. Okay, so 2 gigabytes of storage for 500 songs, 80 gigabytes of storage for how many songs? We're trying to figure out what is that how many? What is that X value, okay? What were you going to say, Itzel?
Like, are we gonna have to like multiply like the 500 with 2 somehow?
There is going to be multiplication involved. Remember, we're doing proportions. So we're trying to set up a proportion. Something over something equals something over something. So if I take this first scenario, we're saying 2 gigabytes to 500 songs equals what?
Equals
80 gigabytes over X songs. Okay? So that's the problem that you're solving. Notice we did gigabytes next to gigabytes and songs next to songs. We're not canceling out our units. We're solving for some number of songs. Do you know how to solve it?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Well, is the answer 20,000?
Yes.
Oh, well, this is what I did.
Sure.
This
Oh, yeah.
divided by that is 40. That? Or this
Mhm.
divided. So that times 40 is 20,000.
Okay. So she went this way. She compared them this way. How do you get from 2 to 80? You multiply by 40, because she did 80 divided by 2 is 40. So then this number times 40 would equal the same thing. That works. If you want to figure it that way. The way that will always work on this without you having to figure out what is that and then move on to the other one is if you cross multiply them. Okay, so if I cross multiply, I have 500 times 80 equals 2 times X. Okay, when you simplify that, 500 times 80 is 40,000 equals 2X. And then I divide by 2, so X equals 20,000. What does that mean?
There are 20,000 songs in the little gigabyte.
You can fit 20,000 songs on the 80 gigabyte MP3. Okay. Questions on that?
Wait.
Yeah.
So the way I did it, will it work every time or no?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, what you did works. Like you found it a different way, but it is the right process. Yeah.
I did 500 divided by 2, and then it gave me 250, and then it's an 80, and then it gave me the answer. Would that be correct? Huh?
Yeah, you guys are just getting there in a different order. But because it's all multiplication and division, it doesn't matter
So it's just
what. What?
It's if we get the answer.
Well, you are going to get the answer that way. So that's fine, but you need to make sure that, like, it's not just like, I think I'll multiply these two and divide these two. That's not going to work every time. You have to know your process and make sure you're following a process that works. So if you can explain to me, like, how you're getting there, I can tell you if your process works.
Okay.
Um,
So, do I tell you?
Sure, tell me.
Move it up a little bit, sorry. Okay, so
Girls, we're
Oh.
doing math.
I saw that it was like 2 gigabytes equals like 500 songs, and then I divide that.
You did 500 divided by 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then from there, I
Mhm.
divides and negates the sum.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, that will work.
Okay.
Just for the sake of, because how I'm gonna like explain it to you every time, I'm gonna cross multiply every time. So you might just want to get in the habit of cross multiplying just to make sure you're doing the same process every time. But what you did is not wrong.
Okay.
So, okay, I'm gonna give you one more like these. Let's say we go 60 miles in 2 hours, and I want to know how many hours it would take us to go 160 miles then. Okay, so how many hours would it take us to go 160 if we are going at the same rate as our 60 miles in 2 hours? How do you set that up as a proportion?
Put 60 over 2 and then equal 160 over.
Right, so 60 miles over 2 hours, and then you got to put your 160 miles across from that. Oh my goodness, what are you doing?
Oh, I showed him the answer.
Oh my god.
You guys are killing me right now. In this setup, what do you do to solve it? Cross multiply, okay? So cross multiply this. 160 times 2 is 320 equals 60 times h, and then, well, I put h, you can call it x. So we're gonna divide by 60. Okay, so it would take you 320 divided by 60. You get this. Okay, here's my question for you. What does that mean? Repeating, right, that's what the bar means. What does 5.3 repeating mean in this problem?
You don't know. What's that part?
You do know. Do you know what 0.3 repeating is as a fraction? 1 over 3. 0.6 repeating is 2 over 3, right? So this is 5 1/3 what?
Hours.
Hours. Okay, so here's my question. 5 1/3 hours is 5 hours and how many minutes?
48. I mean,
What's 1/3 of an hour? 20 minutes, right? 20, 40, 60 would be 1 hour. So it's 5 hours and 20 minutes. Okay, you can just give me this 5 1/3 hours. That's totally fine. But I just want you to understand it's not like 5 hours and 3 minutes, right? It's 1/3 of an hour, which is 20 minutes. Yeah.
so in the beginning, like when we started this, you said don't cross cancel, and you cross cancel.
Don't cancel out units. We're not canceling units. We're cross multiplying. I don't want you to cancel. I don't want miles here and you cancel them out. I don't want you to do that. That's what we did in the conversions before. This one, you put miles across from miles, hours across from hours, and you just multiply and you'll end up with the unknown. So in this case, hours. Okay? Yes.
For tomorrow, you think are we doing for homework review quiz? For homework?
You're